He is currently pursuing a doctoral program in informatics at Telkom University with research focusing on the practical application and challenge of data protection framework in the government sector. Additionally, he also served as a junior research in machine-to-machine communication, IoT, and cybersecurity at Telkom University, exploring integrated system for smart environment and connectivity frameworks. And then he also obtained his master's degree in informatics and bachelor degree in engineering, building a foundation in communication and information technology structure. So, everyone, please join me welcoming Mr. Siddiq Prabowo. The screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vita. Is it my voice is clear? Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this tutorial session at EcoSet 2025. I'm Siddiq Prabowo. As Ms. Dita said before, I'm a lecturer and researcher at Telkom University with a research area in data privacy and security compliance. Today, we are diving into what I call as DPIA analyst, like Ms. Dita said before. In this tutorial, we will try to assessing risk in AI-driven IT project under UU-PDP mandates. Hopefully, this session fits perfectly with the conference theme of navigating the questionable future of software engineering and IT. We'll explore practical ways to manage privacy risk in AI projects while also ensuring compliance with Indonesian data protection law. Let's get started and feel free to jump in with question anytime. Here's our agenda for next 30 to 45 minutes. We'll begin with an introduction to establish the foundation, then proceed to the practical step of conducting DPIA. After that, we'll engage in demo and activity to apply what we've learned. And then finally, we'll discuss future challenge and wrap up with a question and answer session. I hope the structure ensures a balance of theory and real-world application with a simple project I prepare and aiding you in navigating and the uncertainty in IT and AI highlighted in this conference. So, let's start with the basic. UU-PDP or Undang-Undang Pelindungan Data Pribadi is Indonesia's landmark law number 27 of 2022, created to protect personal data in our increasingly digital world. It highlights principles such as lawfulness, which is ensuring data use is justified, and then purpose limitation, data minimization, or collecting only what's necessary, and accountability. As we can see, this law consists of 76 articles divided into 60 chapters. And then, in short, in this law, Indonesia defines 5 stakeholders involved in personal data protection ecosystem. The first one is Data Protection Authority. So far, it's still held by Komdigi Ministry in Indonesia. And the second and the third stakeholder is Personal Data Controller and Data Processor, which is process and control the personal data processing in its organization. And then the fourth stakeholder, we can call it as a data protection officer. It is a personnel or officer that help to monitor, to manage, to consult in the personal data controller or personal data processor. And also it's work as a consultation with the related stakeholder, DPIA, for example. And then the last but not least is us, Indonesian citizen as a personal data subject. Uh, Either we are in Indonesia or in other country, we will protected by this law. Nah, at the core of UU PDP number 22, there are 8 key principles of personal data processing. Like I said before, start from data minimization, purpose limitation, accountability, storage limitation, until lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. In this tutorial session, we will focus only in one instrument under accountability principle, which is data protection impact assessment. The core of high-risk activity in the UU PDP is DPIA, or Data Protection Impact Assessment, outlined in Article 34 UU PDP. This is structured review of potential risks to individual privacy rights. And when it's mandatory for scenario involving new technology such as AI, and then large-scale data processing or sensitive information, including health records or biometric. How about if there are non-compliance in this article? It can result in hefty fines up to 2% of your total global revenue, or even criminal penalties as stated in the UU PDP. And then, what is DPIA? We discuss it more detail. Data Protection Impact Assessment, Article 34, Reg 1, it said that this systematic process to evaluate risk to data subject right from high-risk processing. So what is high-risk processing? In Article 34, Reg 2, it states 7 processing that included or are categorized to high-risk processing. Start from automatic decision making, and then processing of specific personal data, and then processing of large scale personal data, and then processing that included matching or merging a set of data about data subject, and then use of new technology, and then processing that can limit the exercise of rights of personal data subject. And then the last one is evaluation, scoring, monitoring activity systematically against personal data subject. So when you want to start a project that included in one of 7 categories, DPIA becomes mandatory. And then what's the relevances between DPIA to AI in IT project? Like Ms. Dita said before, AI presents unique risks. In this case, such as algorithmic bias in machine learning model that could lead to discrimination, and then data breach in IoT system, or privacy invasion through automated profiling in tools like chatbots, perhaps. DPIA is essential because it identifies this issue early, before the project started, and then can promote ethical AI and allow digital transformation to proceed without falling into legal pitfall or legal traps. The benefits, on the other side, it can reduce costs by addressing problem before launch, and then build user trust and even spark innovation like creating privacy-focused AI. And fun fact, for your information, that study show over 70% of AI project faces privacy challenge, and hopefully DPIA can change that. This hopefully align directly with EcoSet tracks in information security, IT risk management, and software engineering, and hopefully helping us navigate the uncertain future of technology. And then session objective, what will you gain from this session? First of all, I hope you will gain a clear understanding about UU PDP's DPIA requirement for high-risk AI and IT scenario. And then we will learn together the practical step of DPIA, from identifying needs, describing process, assessing risk, and implementing mitigation strategy. And then we will do a short hands-on using tools to apply DPIA in prepare project, of course. By the end, you will have a key takeaway to balance regulatory compliance with innovative advancement, especially in our uncertain tech environment. Decision designed for software engineer, IT manager, AI practitioner, student in Indonesia. And then we will go to preparation. Before we go deeper, let's make sure you are ready. First of all, hopefully you all have basic AI or IT knowledge, and hopefully also you're familiar with UPDP. No need to be an expert, just familiar, or you have heard it before. Or you can quickly reviewing UPDP guideline. There's a link here I provide already. Maybe I will copy the link in the chat before we start to the demo session. I'll provide you with this slide deck and then ready to use DPIA templates in Excel, and then a reading list that includes NAIST privacy framework and article offering an overview of ISO or SNE 29134 about PIA also. And then that's all. I hope you can scan this QR code now to download everything, and we're ready to the demo session. Nah, before we work together to do the DPIA in the prepare project, this is the overview of DPIA step. Actually, there are quite long step in DPIA step, but in this session we will use higher level stage of DPIA step based on UPDP guideline and best practice. There are 4 steps we will conduct in this tutorial session. Stage 1 is determine if DPIA is necessary by performing what we call as threshold assessment or threshold check. It's stage 1. And then stage 2, after we define that DPIA is mandatory, we will start to describe the data processing in detail and map out the data flow. And then stage 3, we will start to assess the risk, evaluate the risk by assessing both likelihood and impact, as we use a risk metric in this tutorial session. And then last step, or stage 4, we will do mitigation of those risks and consult or seek guidance if necessary to the related stakeholder. And then remember, this process is iterative. You can revisit it as your project evolves. This framework helps us in IT and software engineering to develop resilient system for the future. And then we will break it down next. Stage 1, identify is DPIA needed. So there are checklist question and provided Excel in the link. Try to determine whether DPIA is necessary. We can use the checklist. Does your project involve systematic monitoring, like tracking user behavior, and then automated decision that legally impact people, such as base loan approval, perhaps? Or does your process included sensitive data, such as ethnicity or health information? And then for AI, triggers include training machine learning models on personal data using predictive analytics, perhaps, or biometrics. You can consider this example, an AI HR tool scanning resume for profiling. Yes, that require DPIA. If not, you must document your reasoning why DPIA do not mandatory. If so, proceed, and then you can start to reflect on your own project if you have ongoing project. This step enables us to conduct detailed assessment only when risks are high, as stated in the UU PDP. And then after identify is the PIA needed or mandatory, and then we go to the step 2, which is describing processing. Describing the processing cover some key elements such as the purpose. Why are you collecting the data? And then the data categories. Distinguish personal data from sensitive data or any data categories that you state in your organization. And then how long the retention periods and what for you collect or you keep the data. And then who receive or share the data. You can visualize this using mapping tools as flowchart or anything you can use to illustrate the data lifecycle from collection or generate to the deletion step of data. For example, in this tutorial, we will use an AI chatbot project that I prepared before. The data include user text query, which is user input in the query, and then the purpose is NLP training, and the retention is 6 months. That's the project that we will use in this session. And then tips from me is we have to involve cross-functional teams such as IT, legal, risk, if there's access risk function team, and then business to ensure accuracy. And this step is essential as it prevents oversight in complex IT system. And then after that, we continue to the stage 3, which is risk assessment. There are 2 parts for clarity. The first one is choose method, either qualitative with descriptive scales or quantitative scoring. In this tutorial, we will focus on factors such as likelihood. It's how probable is the risk, and then severity or impact. How significantly could it affect individual rights, such as causing discrimination, perhaps? Common AI risks include unauthorized access, and then inaccurate data, which is harming user, or loss of control over personal information. A simple formula that used in this tutorial is risk score equal to likelihood multiplied by impact. You can refer to this metric, which is green indicates low risk, red indicate high risk, and then hopefully this help quantify the uncertainty in AI project related to the questionable future. And then still continue in the stage 3, which is risk assessment. We can use any framework that available in the best practice, such as NIST privacy risk management, or adapt from GDPR template to suite UPDP. For example, I have this news about facial recognition AI. There are risks about bias against minority, which is likelihood medium and high impact, resulting in overall high risk. Yeah. And then tips from me is always record assumption and also evidence, because it's necessary in the next step. After we still in the stage 4 risk mitigation, we continue to the risk 4 risk mitigation. In this step, we employ strategy across technical areas. After we document the risk before, we choose what a proper mitigation strategy, such as encryption or anonymization in the technical aspect, or we can go to the organizational aspect like staff training and policies, and also we can consider legal aspect like processor contract if it's needed. Yeah. For AI, we can focus on bias audit and then explainable models, and also minimizing data in training set. Yeah. After mitigation, reassess residual risk, aiming for low or acceptable level. Now, after we mitigate the risk, if residual risks are high, then we need to consult to related authority. If it is still high, you can consult to PDP authority in Indonesia, in Kombiki. The process involves submitting your DPI report and receiving feedback. Best practice that common in the industry right now is engaging external expert and thoroughly document all the process. Tips from me is start building relationship with regulators early. This step ensure accountability aligned with UPDP, focus on trust in digital ecosystem. And then we cover the theory. Now it's time for practical. Yeah, I hope you all have downloaded the prepare file in the link provided before. So in this demo, I have prepared a hypothetical project as an AI chatbot for customer services that handles personal data, such as name and preference. We will use DPI templates I provided before with optional use of any diagramming application that you can use. We will walk through all the steps. No coding is required so that you can adapt it to your setup easily. Then I will move to my file before. Okay. Nah, I already put the simple DPI tools that we can use in this section. So we start from the metadata sheet. Yeah. We can start to fill in the information in here. What is it? AI chatbot. So we put the project name in, and then today is 09/10/2025. This is 160. Project name, we focus on customer query chatbot version 2 perhaps. Sorry. And then controller, you can put Bandung. Oh, sorry. And then the processor. If your process is helped with the processor, we can put the processor name in here, or if you process it by yourself, so you can put it with NA because it processed internally. And then you can put your name in here as DPO perhaps, or any roles that you have, and then who review the document. IT manager perhaps, approver name, COO perhaps. Actually, we have one document to be filled in before this step is ROPA. We can assume that we already have the ROPA previously, and we need to refer to the ROPA document. That's the metadata. And then we go to the section 1. Section 1 is identify it is DPI mandatory or not. There are checklist question, automated decision making, and then processing of specific personal data, ACID processing of personal data of large scale. In this case, we choose profiling. So yes. And then we give a justification of NLP to profiling the customer using external data. Yeah. So decision DPS require, yes. No, because our case does not. No. So if one row state yes, so DPIA is become mandatory. Yeah. Sorry, 9 and 10 is additional. It's not included in the DPIA high risk, but I put it in if it's necessary for the other step, I think. And then, so DPIA mandatory. If this mandatory, we choose yes and then sign off. Who make this pre-assessment of the DPIA or threshold check of the DPIA, and then if need, then we go to the section 2. Section 2, we describe the processing activity. Yeah, there are field and description here. Yeah, this is what example for AI chatbot that I provided before. So the processing activity, you can give a brief description about the processing activity. Oh, this is NLP-based query analysis for personalized response. And then the purpose of the processing, why you process the data, because it will improve customer services and train ML model, perhaps. And then what data categories, type of personal data, text queries, name preference, sensitive, location if enable. Yeah, and then who is the data subject? Is it a customer or employee, a student, or etc. So in this example, end user, age 80 plus in Indonesia. And then what's the legal basis of the processing activity? Consent, Article 20, or legitimate interest, Article 21. And then how you collect the data? Is it using form, manual form, or online form? In this case, user input via apps external API. We need to state detail external API or using any other communication protocol. And then storage retention, where and how long you keep the data. Oh, I keep the data in encrypted database. And how long I keep it? It's 6 months post interaction. And then who you share the data with? I only share with internal IT team, no cross-border, which means I do not share the data into another nation or another corporate internal team, IT only. And then what security measure that you will provide in this processing activity? Basic protection, I use encryption AES 256, and then access control or any other technical privacy processing technology that you use. And then scale or volume, the transaction of the data, estimated data volume. There are 5,000 queries a day. And then we need to diagramming the data flow. You can use any diagramming tools that you use daily. After we describe the project in the sheet 2, we continue to the section 3. Now, in the section 3, we start to assess the risk assessment. So in this project, we have risk ID, risk description, and then cost, likelihood, impact, and then risk score. Risk score get from likelihood and impact, multiply by impact. And then what's the category of this risk? It's privacy, security, or etc. I have make a simple risk assessment from this case, for this case. Yeah. Oh, because we use API, there is a risk that there are data breach via insecure API. The cause is weak encryption in external feeds, perhaps. And then the second risk is algorithmic bias in response. And then the third one is unauthorized access to user profile, and then non-compliance fines. It's included in the risk list. We state the cause also, what will cause the risk happen. And then we assess the likelihood and impact. In this case, I choose risk 1 with likelihood medium, and then risk 2 with likelihood high, low, and medium. Impact, as you can see, risk 1 high, risk 2 medium, risk 3 high, and then risk 3 also high. Nah, we use the risk score here is by multiplying the likelihood with the impact score. Yeah, we can use the risk metric provided before in here. Nah, I also provide the risk metric in here. Low, 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 high, medium, high. You can use risk metric that you already have in your organization, or you create one with more exhaustive effort, of course. And then we continue to the last sheet, which is section 4. In this section, you can see that there are focus on mitigation strategy. We have 4 risks before. We need to inform about the mitigation strategy, also responsible team, timeline, and if there is excess residual risk or post mitigation, and is it needed for consultation with the related stakeholder. So I already make the example also. Nah, based on what we fill in section 3 before, we have 4 risks: data breach, algorithmic bias, and authorized access to user profile and non-compliant fines. We mitigate every risk in the section, in the sheet 3 before. Now, mitigation strategy, data breach via unsecure API. We can use end-to-end encryption and then regular audits. Who responsible for this mitigation strategy? IT security team. IT security team. And then when will this mitigation strategy implement? In quarter 4 to 2025. Residual risk. If we implement the mitigation strategy, there are low residual risk. It is needed to consult with the PDP or any other authority related. No. Nah, and then risk 2. The interesting thing is risk 2. Conduct bias audit. The first training, we see the risk 2, algorithmic bias in response. And the cause is bias training data. We just conduct bias audit in the mitigation strategy. And then we also use the first training data to minimize the risk. Who responsible for this team? AI dev team, perhaps. Timeline, we are ongoing, or we are processing this mitigation right now. So the timeline is ongoing. And then residual risk still medium. Because the residual risk is still medium or high, I think we need to consult with the PDP authority, etc. And then the last one is actually consult log. From section sheet before, there are needed for consultation with authority or expert. So you can choose this date 10 perhaps, yeah. 10 October. Nah, who we consult to? Oh, Komdiki, PDP authority. And then what's the feedback? Oh yeah, we can use the diverse training set. And then action taken, we use, what is it? Diverse training data. Nah, feedback. Nah, perhaps like this. Yeah. 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 When we finish this sheet, we already done DPIA in one iteration. So that's the process of simple DPIA. As I need to remind you that this is the simple step of DPIA. You can improve or you can add any other information that you need, to the form or the sheet, based on your organization needed. Yeah. So that's the, yeah. Okay, that's the demo, and then we go to the PowerPoint again. Wait. Nah, that's the demo for today, and then before we go to the discussion, perhaps there are future challenge that we can looking ahead, including applying DPIA in the generative AI, perhaps, where what we call as hallucination could affect privacy. Regulation will evolve to PDP update, and also another region or another country also bring out their own personal data protection. And then also the next challenge is we need to navigate uncertainty. We can adopt privacy by design in DevOps and prepare for quantum threats, perhaps. And but however, there are opportunities also, such as using AI for automated DPIA tools, which is still challenging and open for you to explore. That's the future challenge. And then the last slide is best practice and takeaway. So start DPIA early, before we start the development. You can put it in the user requirement phase in the SDLC perhaps, and then iterate flexibly and document for audit. So the takeaway is DPIA isn't just about compliance, it's a tool for innovative and secure IT. The next step, you can start to apply in your work, in your organization, and to, to encourage and to improve your knowledge. I recommend you to join privacy communities, because there are a lot of new knowledge, new information, and new method that publish every day. You can join in any privacy communities, start from LinkedIn and any other channel, perhaps. Yeah, that's all. And then pleasure to discussing how to navigate our tech future. And you can reach me out at this email and LinkedIn. That's all. Perhaps Miss Dita. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sidik Prabowo, for the insightful and comprehensive presentation. So, everyone, we are now will opening the discussion session. Please, if you have any question, don't hesitate to raise your hand, open your camera, and let's engage. We will have discussion with our tutorial speaker. We have around maybe 10 or 15 minutes, yeah, to have discussion. Or if you feel not comfortable to open your camera, you also can use the chat box to write down your question. Anyone maybe wants to ask question? Okay, we have Badria that is raising her hand. Badria. I'm looking for this Badria. Okay, Badria, hello. Can you open your mic and say hello?
Hello.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Badria, please feel free to ask question to Mr. Sidik.
So thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask. So what I want to talk about is about like there's something similar like DPO in UA, like UA's GDPR and Singapore's PDPR. So how effectively does Indonesia grand design for the DPO ecosystem address the growing attention between technological advancement and citizen right to privacy? And also how grand design interpret the principle of the RUU PDP into actionable governance mechanism to regarding accountability and oversight of data controllers and processor. That's for me.
Okay. So there are two questions from Badria. Sorry, can you repeat the first one, Badria?
So how effectively does Indonesia's grand design or for the DPO ecosystem address the growing tension between technological advancement and citizen right to privacy?
Okay, Mr. Sidik, maybe we can answer the first question.
Okay. Thank you, Badria. Yeah. Next question. So actually, if you say Singapore, Singapore already have the regulation from 2012, if I'm not mistaken, ya, Bu Dita ya. And then EU launched their GDPR at 2018. And Indonesia just launched it in 2022. Basically, almost, if I can say, about 70 or 75% in the our UU PDP is similar to GDPR actually. So if you say how the grand design of the regulatory about the personal data protection, like you said before that our government is still try to what is it to catch up to follow up the development of regulation of personal data protection by releasing the UU PDP. And also you said before that there are RPP or Rancangan Peraturan Presiden, yeah, but unfortunately until today it's not been released yet. But that's also the effort from Indonesian government to make the regulation more prominent or more strong in not only in Indonesian but it effective in a whole world, if I can say, just like GDPR. GDPR protect their EU citizenship around the world, not only in EU. This UU PDP also protect us as Indonesian citizenship, not only when we are in Indonesia, but also when you go to Europe, you go to US or any other region in the world. So this one instrument that actually protect us as Indonesian citizenship. I hope that answer your question.
Okay, Badria, do you have a follow-up question?
No, yeah, I guess it's understandable for me.
Okay, then maybe we move to the second question from Badria, Mr. Siddiq. Badria asks, how does the grand design interpret the principle of the RUU PDP into actionable governance mechanism regarding accountability and oversight of data controllers and processor?
Yeah, that's interesting question also ya, Bu Dita. We can answer it in perhaps 2 hour lecture perhaps, but simply UU PDP, yeah, actually UU PDP cannot be used just as is right now, yeah, to provide accountability and then to guarantee information security, data privacy, and etc. We cannot use as is right now. We still need a lot of follow-up instrument to make it usable. Yeah, like you said before, there are RPP, there are another what is it follow-up regulation as an instrument that this regulation can be used, and also about the authority. If we say in Europe there are existing data protection authority that stand side with the ministry and the government, but in Indonesia it's still we are still waiting. Is this authority, when this authority will be really soon? Actually, it must be independent, no conflict interest in this authority. Yeah, still long journey, I think. Yeah, so as a comparison, like Europe already released the GDPR from 2018, and until now they still try to elaborate and try to complete the regulation to make this regulation can work good and protect us as a data subject. Yeah, I think that's Bu Dita.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Siddiq Prabowo. So, Badria and everyone, maybe we can have conclusion that this Indonesian that personal data protection law is like cannot stand alone. So we still need a chain of regulation after this UU PDP is established on 2022. So we're still waiting for several regulation after that. So maybe we move to the second second participant that wants to ask a question. Okay, Matthew Glenn, maybe you can open your mic. Matthew Glenn Abram.
Hello, Miss.
Okay, maybe you would like to ask the question directly to Mr. Siddiq.
Okay. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Metuguna Prapapahan, and I'm from IT 49 from International. And Mr. Siddiq, I want to ask you from the factor of what if there is a leaking personal data from hacker, or maybe there's a malfunction system from the maybe website or else, and I want to ask you about what are the solution for this case, and what are the steps by steps that the technician, or maybe uh, the process to fix this problem. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Siddiq, maybe
Yeah.
this, if I can make it short, Matthew asked about the incident response, right? Like, what if there is a personal data breach?
Yeah.
Let's say in our organization, what should we do?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Ms. Dita. Actually, this UPDP also, what is it? Also, uh, what is it? It also stated an organization with data protection and personal data protection in it, they must have some kind of dedicated organization, like personal data committee or personal data protection officer in their organization. So if perhaps, for example, if you have your data breach from application in your campus, perhaps we can report it to the dedicated unit at the organization or your campus to follow up. Is there any breach? Is there any malfunction in the system, etc.? That's the first step that we can do. You are a student of Telkom University, perhaps. If you feel that your data has been breached from one of the apps from Telkom University, you can report it to the IT Directorate in the Telkom University. That's the simple example. That's the first. And then if there's no action or there's no follow-up action from the the stakeholder, you can go to the next level. Like I stated in the previous slide, we all have data protection authority. In this case, there are Komdigi ministry in Indonesia as data protection authority. So I think that's the step by step. But before that, you can secure your data, or you can change your any of your username, change your password, and etc. If data happen leaking personal data. Yeah, I think that's Bu Dita.
Okay, Matthew, do you have a follow-up question?
No, miss. I'm already understand.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Matthew,
you,
for the
miss.
question. And then maybe the last question will be from, sorry, Dare. Can you open your camera and open your mic?
Okay, wait, miss.
Okay.
Okay. Good morning, sir. My question
Yeah,
is UU PDP really functioning while I read some news that the president of Indonesia is trying to transfer our personal data to the US in terms of e-commerce? Thank you.
that's nice and clear question, yeah, Bu Dita, I think. Yeah, it is functional. I only can answer hopefully. Yeah, hopefully this regulation can functionally as it's uh, released by the government. But like I said before, for example, like GDPR, they need about 10 to 15 years to make the regulation full function in their regulation. And what if you said about the our president have willing to transfer our data to other country? That's the one of the function of this regulation is to protect those kind of transaction. When Indonesian want to transfer data to US, UK, or any other country in the world, previously the vendor or the party do not have any requirement to protect our data. Actually, they can freely transfer our data. They don't have mandatory to protect the data or to do like what we do today, DPIA, ROPAR, etc. They don't have requirement like this. But after this regulation release, those kind of transfer must be comply with UU PDP. So any vendor, any corporate, any government unit that doing transfer data to any other region must protect the data. That's the function of this UU PDP. But yeah, for me, I think it's hopefully it will help to protect our data as Indonesian citizenship.
Okay, Dare, do you have a follow-up question?
Not at all. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Okay, thank
Dare.
you, Dare. So, anyone want to ask question? Anyone? Okay, Bapak Sidik, maybe one question from me, because as I see in the participant list, there are quite a lot of students here watching our tutorial. So, what's your advice maybe for the young generation to adapt in this very dynamic environment of digital transformation, cybersecurity threat, and the needs to comply to our law, especially about personal data protection?
Okay, thank you, Bu Disha. As a young generation, I think the first step that we can do is you need to to improve our knowledge or our awareness about how precious is our personal data. That's the most important thing, I think, because any instrument, any regulation, any technology, if us as the user don't have sense of important about our data, so that's all the instrument will be useless. Yeah, that's the first thing. And then like I usually say to my daughter that your personal data is as precious as your house. That's I say to our child. Nah, and then as a lecturer, I will say that you can start to explore about new area about data privacy, data governance, and privacy preserving technology that can help any party or any organization to comply with any kind of regulation that will come in front after this, perhaps. Yeah, I think that's Bu Dita.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Sidik Prabowo. And thank you so much for everyone for your active participation and thoughtful question. And of course, our deepest appreciation to Mr. Sidik Prabowo for sharing his valuable insight and practical perspective on DPIA implementation under UU PDP mandates, especially in the context of AI-driven IT project. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe today's discussion has give us not only clearer understanding of compliance requirements, but also a stronger appreciation of importance of responsible innovation. Once again, thank you, Mr. Sidik. Thank you to all participants for your enthusiasm and engagement. With that, we'll now close this tutorial session, and then we will return to our main agenda, to the master ceremony. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Bu Dita.
Wabarakatuh.
Thank you.
Wow, that was an amazing session. Thank you, Insinyur Sidik Prabowo and also Miss Dita Oktaria for this amazing session. So ladies and gentlemen, let's give warm applause for our amazing tutorial session. And we also would like to invite Mr. Sidik. Would you please kindly still on the camera, and also Miss Dita Oktaria, please be on the camera because we're about to deliver our token of appreciation from the committee. So we'd like to deliver the certificate of appreciation to our speaker, Insinyur Prabowo STMT CHIDPP. Thank you for the insights and also knowledge that you have shared here with all of us, all students and also participants. And also the next certificate delivered to Ms. Dita Oktaria, ESCOM MT, as our moderator for this amazing session. Thank you for the interactive session, Ms. Dita. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that's the morning session, which very impressive, of course. And also thank you to all of the participants for joining us and also being active participants during the tutorial session. Once again, let's give a warm applause for this tutorial session. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we have successfully completed our morning session, and it is now the time for us to recharge ourselves. And in the next session, there will be still the parallel session conducted in the separated room, but in this main room session, we're going to next conducted the keynote session on 1 p.m. at 1 p.m. So please note the crucial time. We need everyone to be back here in the main room at 1 p.m. because we'll have the next session. There will be keynote session which will be invited Professor Ridi Verdiana, who will be talking about the AI revolution in software engineering education, reshaping curriculum and pedagogy for the future. So we also like to invite every one of you to join us at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. for the closing ceremony of the ICOSET 2025. We also will witness together who will be awarded as the best paper award of ICOSET 2025, the sneak peek of ICOSET 2026, and also the closing remarks from the Dean of School of Computing, Telkom University. So ladies and gentlemen, don't miss the chance to join us and grasp much knowledge in the afternoon session later on in 1 p.m. at 1 p.m. And also would like to invite every one of you to once again scan the QR code for your presence of today. Please kindly use your own camera, not using the application or MyTelu application for marking your presence of today's session. So ladies and gentlemen, that's wrap up our morning session for this main room. So we'll see you again at 1 p.m. for the next keynote session. See you all. I'm Mian Hamida, your master of ceremony for today's session. School of Computing at Telkom University is committed to becoming a leading center of excellence in computer science, technology, and innovation. With a strong focus on artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, we provide education that truly responds to the demands of the digital era. Aligned with our vision to become a national excellence entrepreneurial university driven by AI and contributing to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, we are ready to accelerate